We need to talk about Trump's New World Order, because it wasn't meant to be this way, at least not for the elites in Brussels and Davos. And certainly not for the post-war visionaries who thought that the West would run on autopilot or at least bend to the economic pacification of China. But in 2026, this illusion has collapsed. Not because the West has fallen, but because it's finally being forced to wake up and grow up in a 21st century of great power competition that seeks to subjugate the West through consumption-based domination than to partner with it. At the center of this upheaval is Donald Trump. Re-elected, emboldened, and unapologetic, he hasn't just brought back America First, he's weaponized it into a doctrine of self-responsibility. His message to allies is clear. America will lead, but it will no longer allow for strategic free-riding. The coddling of the protected prosperity class of the Western world is over. Look at what just happened. In his I am the captain now moment, he walked into Davos and told the world that America is in charge. And you can either follow or get out of the way. For example, Britain, under pressure from Trump, has reversed course on the sale of the Chagos Islands and has canceled the deal, recognizing that strategic real estate in the Indian Ocean is not a bargaining chip, but rather a bulwark of the Western alliance. And this shouldn't be looked at as loyalty to Washington, but rather cold realism. But the world is getting harder, and sovereignty is no longer theoretical or defensible with words alone. Then came Trump's provocative push for Greenland, part coercion, part negotiation, part showmanship. It has forced Europe to confront a truth that is largely ignored or tacitly acknowledged, that the Arctic is up for grabs. No longer neutral ground, NATO, under U.S. pressure, has created a Greenland framework for future collective security. If there is any risk, even the slightest, that China or Russia could insert influence over this part of the globe, that is risk that is too great in Trump's eyes. And so while Europe may have initially bristled, it has now moved in the direction that Trump has wanted. And then there is Canada, ever the defiant, spoiled neighbor to the north. They seek a free trade agreement with China, and China agrees. What could arguably be perceived as a middle finger to America, in response, Trump has threatened a 100% tariff on Canada if they seek to go through with this deal with the West's adversary. And one could get an idea of Trump's reasoning in this social media post. If Governor Carney thinks he is going to make Canada a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States, he is sorely mistaken. China will eat Canada alive, completely devour it, including the destruction of their businesses, social fabric, and general way of life. If Canada makes a deal with China, it will immediately be hit with a 100% tariff against all Canadian goods and products coming into the USA. The disrespect of calling the Prime Minister governor notwithstanding, people need to understand what is actually happening here. China is not operating in a free economy. There is no free trade with China. It never has been. They have always had tariffs and other economic blockades against other nations being able to sell into their economy while expecting the West to open their doors to Chinese goods. And so Trump's entire tariff approach is to create that similar wall against China. And so China is finding every way they can to subvert that wall by making actual free trade agreements with the likes of, say, Mexico and now Canada. Now, at Davos, Carney tried to justify this by saying that lesser powers need to be able to protect their own national security and diversify their economic interests. And in turn, Trump reminded Canada that they exist because the U.S. allows it. And while this statement is harsh, it's also true. But what Carney and other Western leaders don't understand is what Trump is ultimately trying to do. China is to the West what dealers are to users. Ironically, Trump seems to be the only adult in the room trying to get a bunch of petulant teens off of their addiction. A strategic decoupling detox. And what we're witnessing is economic dependency withdrawal. And so in many ways bad, and yet in some ways good, we are finally witnessing that Europe or the NATO nations are actually contributing to their own defense. Not with excitement, not with idealism, but with a grim recognition that America's patience and protection are no longer unconditional. They were given the carrot by Bush and Obama, and now the stick by Trump across every sector of the economy. And this is the genius or the brutality of Trump's New World Order. He shattered the comfort zone, he exposed the dependency, and he forced our allies to make a choice. To grow up, sober up, and contribute, or fall behind into irrelevancy. Or worse yet, capitulate to the destruction by multiculturalism and conform to the will of your dealer in the Far East. Europe, for all its sophistication, has become a strategic adolescent. Rich in undeserved and misplaced moral superiority and lectures, and lacking in hard power. It outsourced deterrence to America, its energy to Russia, and its manufacturing to China. Trump didn't politely ask for change like presidents in the past. He demanded it. He slapped tariffs, questioned NATO's purpose, and treated diplomacy as a business ledger. And the result? Well, a disgruntled but increasingly capable Western alliance, for one. Countries in Europe are being reminded that culture matters and that values are important and worth defending. And I haven't even mentioned Trump's Board of Peace, which was ratified by the United Nations Security Council. Trump's message has never been about isolationism, sorry you isolationists, but it has always been about hard-nosed leadership. And he expects America's allies to act like junior partners, not spoiled dependents. If the West is expected to stand against the red tide of authoritarian resurgence, economic coercion, and information warfare, then it must become what it once was, strong, proud, and self-reliant. Now, the irony is that you will hear from geopolitical experts across social media and the political elite all saying the same thing, that they know better, even though it's their mentality that built the world of the last 25 to 30 years. And yet they're going to stand there and tell you somehow that Trump is wrong, even though we're dealing with the world that they built. And at some point, when these experts are so wrong so often, you just have to basically stop listening to them. So make no mistake, China's pursuit of a Chinese-centric New World Order and their pursuit of Taiwan is a risk that is so great that it must be treated as a certainty. And so the West must disrupt Chairman Xi's decision-making calculus to the point where any decision he does make towards military action towards Taiwan leads to the destruction of West Taiwan, aka China. And that is the primary reason for all of this. We need to talk about Trump's New World Order, because